Welcome everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the resignation of Vice President of India, and it is one of the important topics in civil service syllabus. So the Vice President of India has officially resigned. But what happens next? Will the country go into a political crisis? Who takes charge of the Rajya Sabha now? And how is the next vice president chosen? We are going to dive deeper into all these questions in this video. So let's start. Understanding the role. First, we start with understanding the role of the Vice President of India. Why the role of Vice President of India is so important. In India, the Vice President is the second highest constitutional authority after the President. The chairperson of the Rajya Sabha, which is also known as upper house of the parliament. So the Vice President holds the second highest constitutional authority, and the first one is President. And he or she is also chairperson of the Rajya Sabha, which is also known as upper house of the parliament. First in line to act as president if the president cannot fulfill their duties. So Vice President of India comes first in line to act as president if the president is unable to fulfill their duties. This position is defined under Article 63 and 70 of the Indian Constitution. This position, that the vice president acts as a president in the absence of president in presidential office. This position is defined under Article 63 to 70 of the Indian Constitution. Now, if we look into the quick facts, elected for a 5-year term, which means vice president is elected for a 5-year term. Vice president is elected by electoral college, which consists of MPs from both the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. He does not, he or she does not resign with the government or prime minister. It's a non political constitutional role. So, the role of Vice President of India is non political. Therefore, he or she does not resign with the government or prime minister. It is a constitutional role. What is the resignation process of the vice president? How does a vice president resign? According to Article 67 Clause B of Indian Constitution, the vice president may resign his office by writing under his hand addressed to the president. That means a formal resignation letter is sent to the President of India. Once the President accepts it, the resignation becomes official. So, this resignation is given in Article 67 Clause B of Indian Constitution. What it says? It says that Vice President may resign his office by writing under his hand, that is a simple resignation, a formal simple resignation letter that is to be sent to the President, and once the President accepts the resignation, it becomes official. What is the important note here? There is no approval needed from Parliament or Prime Minister. It's between Vice President and the President. So, Prime Minister is not involved in the resignation of the Vice President. Parliament is not involved in the resignation of Vice President. It is only a formal thing between President and Vice President of India. because it is a constitutional role and not a political role, and that is why Parliament and Prime Minister is not involved in the resignation process of the Vice President of India. What happens after resignation? So now that the Vice President has resigned, what next? What comes next? What happens? The election announcement happens the next. The next step after resignation is the announcement of election, because obviously the vacuum that has been created, not the vacuum, it's actually not the vacuum, but still the post that has been uh, create, created uh, is to be filled by someone. So, election announcement happens. The Election Commission of India will soon announce the date for the vice presidential election. As per convention, the election is held within 6 months of vacancy. The next step is electoral process. Only members of parliament, that is MPs from Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, can uh, participate in the voting process of this election, and the voting is done via secret ballot using a single transferable vote system. This is how Vice President of India is elected, and until a new vice president is elected, the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha or the senior most member available handles the parliamentary proceedings. That means the vacuum is not created, but vacancy is created, and there is still the acting members on the post of vice president, because the work shall go on. Why do vice president resign? So there are several reasons for the resignation of vice president. First, it can be for health or any personal reason. Second, political strategy, that is to run for a higher post like presidency or to contest in Lok Sabha elections. Difference with the ruling government can also lead to resignation of vice president, though it is rare. It's possible. Voluntary retirement from public life is also one of the reasons for the resignation of the vice president. Historical context and past resignation. If we see historical context and past resignations that have been happened, that has been happened in Indian context. So has, if you can recall, if any of the vice president resigned in their midterm, but um, it has not happened very often. Most vice presidents complete their terms and move on to become presidents, like Dr. S. Radhakrishnan was vice president and moved on to become president. Zakir Hussain, Shankar Dayal Sharma. Resignations midterm extremely rare. That's why this event is so significant for India, and it draws attention to the stability of India's constitutional framework. How it affects governance. Does this resignation of the vice president affects the functioning of the government? Not directly. The Prime Minister, President, Cabinet, and other institutions continue to function as usual. The Rajya Sabha will see temporary presiding officers until the new Vice President is elected. And most importantly, it shows how strong and flexible India's democracy is. Our constitution has clear backup plans for every high office, from the prime minister to the president to the vice president. So, there is always a backup plan in the constitution of India for every high office, so that the functions and the works can be carried on smoothly. And this is not just something very this is significant because the resignation of vice president in the midterm is very rare, but this is just a transitional phase and it does not directly affect the functioning of the government. To sum up, the vice president has resigned and the president has accepted his resignation officially. The election commission will announce elections soon for the office of vice president. The Rajya Sabha will be chaired temporarily, and soon India will have a new vice president through a democratic constitutional process. So don't let the headlines confuse you. This is not a crisis, but it is a transition which will be handled smoothly because of India's democratic constitutional process. So that's all for this topic. If you like this video and if you want to uh, know more about the topics related to civil service examination, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching.